stabilize growth, and we have succeeded not in full measure but in substantial measure. The biggest success we have attained is in containing the fiscal deficit. If you ask me what is the one number which analysts all over the world are looking at, it is a fiscal deficit number. That's the first sign of whether the economy is stable or not. We have contracted the fiscal deficit substantially. We have contained it exactly according to the plan I outlined after I accepted the Vijay Kelko report. In fact, we have done better than the plan. The second significant success is in sharply containing the current account deficit. Remember, last year it was $88 billion, and no one gave us half a chance of being able to contain it or to finance it. This year, the year that ends today, we have not only contracted the current account deficit substantially, we have added to reserves. I think we will add about $25 billion to reserves, and our reserves have crossed $300 billion this afternoon. We have also contained inflation. I'm not saying we have tamed inflation, but we have moderated inflation. WPI inflation has come down. So has CPI inflation, but there is some distance to go. And if there are questions, I will be happy to answer why some of the steps that we took in order to help sections of people who deserved help, like farm labor, like producers of cereals like wheat, paddy, and commercial crops like sugarcane. Why those steps will necessarily have an inflationary impact, but balancing the inflationary impact and the beneficial impact of those steps on the poor, consciously some steps were taken to increase the minimum support price, to increase the wages under Manrega, to give an impetus to rural wages. But we can go into that later if any of you wish to ask questions. So let me tell you, and through you, the people of India, the economy today is far more stable and far stronger than what it was 20 months ago. And what we feared may happen has not happened. The economy is stable, and going forward, I can only see spirited growth in the economy. Provided, and this is the big proviso, provided the next government adheres to the 10-point agenda that I outlined in my interim budget speech. That is not a partisan agenda. That is not a party's agenda. That can be the only agenda of a nation that wants to go forward. That is the only agenda of anyone who's concerned about keeping India's economy, India's flag high in a turbulent world. And if there are any questions on the 10-point agenda, I'll be quite happy to answer those questions. If we adhere to the 10-point agenda, I have no doubt in my mind that we will quickly get back to the high growth path. I will keep a firm hand on the wheel until the last day, and I sincerely hope that I can hand over the wheel to another firm hand. Those are my opening remarks. Now, the floor is open for questions. You moderate.
I think yes.
Yashwant Sinha has hit out at you, and he specially said, in fact, he's given 18 questions for you to answer. He's saying under your watch, economy has been in a shambles. That's my first question. I have a...
No.
One question.
Well, the last 10 minutes I've tried to explain why Well, the last 10 minutes I've tried to explain why the...
There's a paper on jobs. Just take that out.
I got it. Okay. Now, this is a bit technical, but you will have to bear with me. There are two metrics. One is the status of the respondent who's asked the question. He's asked usually two questions: current daily status and usual principal and subsidiary status, to ask whether he's employed. That is where you get it in the numerator. Then there's a denominator, which is equally important, which is how many people are offering themselves for jobs in the job market. Now, if you look at usual principal and subsidiary status, in 1999-2000, 396 million people said what their employment status was, that they were employed. They said they were employed. In 2004-05, 457 million people said they were employed. That's the first year of the UPA. In 2009-10, 459 million people said they were employed. And in 2011-12, 472 million people said they were employed. So the number of people who say they're employed is actually rising, not declining. That is point one. Even if you look at current daily status, the numbers for the 4 years are 338 million in 99-2000, 382 million in 2004-5, 400 million in 2009-10, and 415 million in 2011-12. So numbers are rising. But what is happening is the denominator is not changing or rising at the same rate. Especially if you break it down by gender, women who are offering themselves for jobs in the job market and who would have to be counted in the denominator are not offering themselves in such large numbers. Some people have gone into this phenomenon. One of the reasons, this is not the only reason, one of the reasons is enrollment in schools has increased substantially. Gross enrollment ratio in the colleges has increased substantially. And not enough people, as compared to previous years, in terms of growth, are offering themselves for jobs. Which is why the absolute number of jobs created from point to point, which is what the NDA is harping upon, has declined. But equally, what the UPA will harp upon is unemployment has declined. So both are true statements. The absolute number of jobs created by the CDS, UP, SS is not as large as it was in the NDA period, but the unemployment rate is lower than in the NDA period. For example, if you look at the unemployment rate, it was 8.2% when the UPA took office. It came down to 6.6% in 2009-10. It came to 5.6% in 2011-12, for which numbers are available. So I think this is in fact a rather complex issue where numbers can be interpreted or even misinterpreted. But what I would say is this. Yes, in absolute numbers, if you go by UPSS and CDS, the number of people who claim to be employed and therefore jobs is higher in the NDA period. But there are other things happening in society. People are in school, people are in college, people are in self-employment or whatever. And therefore the number of people coming to the job market, especially women, is lower. The unemployment rate has declined substantially. It has in fact declined from 8.2% to 5.6% if you go by the CDS. So I think there is merit in both arguments.
Yeah. One, we'll come back. Yeah.
I think the celebration began when Mr. Yashwant Sinha declined to contest elections. And the celebrations are continuing. The celebrations are continuing now that the BJP is doing a number of things like expelling Jaswant Singh. The celebrations are continuing now. Even today the market celebrated. What is the market celebrating today? These are puerile questions.
Yeah.
No. Let the moderator ask you and I will answer.
Yeah. Speak loudly.
Mr. Yashwant Sinha also accused you that you have brought down fiscal deficit artificially. The UPA government messed up the investment climate. And number three, that in case India government comes to power, they will revisit the gas pricing policy.
No, what is your question? You are asking three questions in one to one. What is your question?
It is alleged that you have brought down fiscal deficit artificially. Would you like to respond to that?
All right, just. There are only two ways in which fiscal deficit can be contained. One is by increasing revenues more than your original estimate, or reducing expenditure from your original estimate. There is no third way. Nobody, not even the NDA or the BJP, has any magic wand other than the two metrics that I mentioned. When economic growth is slow, revenues don't increase rapidly. In the UPA 1 period, revenues increase by 20% a year. When economic growth is slow, when global trade is slow, when all advanced economies are growing at a much slower rate, revenues won't increase exponentially. So when revenues don't rise, the only way is to contain expenditure. We have, if you look at plan to plan, we have not reduced plan expenditure from 1 year to the previous year. For example, if you look at 2012-13, plan expenditure actuals was 4,13,625 crore. If you look at 2013-14 revised estimate, look at 2013-14 revised estimates, plan expenditure is 4,75,532 crore. It is still 62,000 crore more than the previous year. And 62,000 crore on a base of 4,13,000 crore represents an increase of about 14%. So plan expenditure has been increased, but where we cannot afford the original plan expenditure, some plan expenditure has to be cut. I thought this was elementary.
Yeah, just a minute.
You have to catch his eye.
Statesman.
Mr. Chidambaram, two of your colleagues, Mr. Anand Sharma and Mr. Jairam Ramesh, they have hit out at Election Commission for what they accuse Election Commission of indulging in overreach over Election Commission's decision to ask the government to defer its decision to double the gas prices. Would you share the sentiments of your two colleagues as party feel that it is now the case, fit case, to revisit the gas price hike issue?
You want to answer that? Okay. Now, in my view, there was no obligation on the part of the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas to refer this issue to the Election Commission in the first place. This was a cabinet decision taken several months ago. The cabinet reviewed the decision about 2.5, 3 months ago, long before the election notification came, and reiterated its earlier decision. Therefore, there was no case to refer it to the Election Commission. I think they did it out of abundant caution. I think there is no case to revisit the cabinet decision. The cabinet decision is a right decision. It has taken into account all pros and cons, including reservations expressed by different ministries. So the cabinet decision is the right decision, and I would defend the cabinet decision. Please remember, for every unit of gas that we do not produce out of our own fields, it does not mean that we can live without gas. We have to import an equivalent 1 unit of gas. And today we are importing 1 unit of gas at a much higher price than the approximately $8 that we had indicated with effect from 1st April 2014.
Mr. Finance
This one.
Minister, you've been
Also.
quoted as saying that big business is supporting Mr. Modi and the BJP. Is there an admission then that big business or corporate India has deserted the Congress?
No, I said big business with a capital B, and now I can add capital I, capital G. That kind of big business, which likes crony capitalism, is the most ardent supporter of the BJP. I think business is comfortable with the UPA. I think business is quite comfortable with Dr. Manmohan Singh. Business was quite comfortable with the UPA's finance ministers. But there are sections of business which are extremely comfortable with BJP and Mr. Narendra Modi because his brand of capitalism is crony capitalism.
Would you qualify that section of business? Yes.
I beg pardon?
Would you qualify that section of business?
Qualify means? I've qualified it big with BIG.
I'm coming. We are coming.
No, he has to call you.
Come. Yeah, please.
Mr. Chidambaram, several of your colleagues this time wanted to change their seats or not fight elections at all. In your case, sir, why did you decide not to fight elections?
Good question. Good question. I have fought 8 elections over the last 30 years. And I made it clear in many interviews, even a year ago, that I have many other things that I want to do in my life. Life has only one innings. There are no 2 innings in this life. There's only one innings. It's like a T20 or a ODI 50. How I play the last 10 overs of my innings, I have to decide. I cannot live your life. You cannot live my life.
So you mean to say that you are retiring from politics now?
I didn't say that. In fact, I categorically denied I'm retiring from politics. I said I'm not contesting this election because I want to do certain other things in my life, in whatever years are left to me.
Yeah.
Will you be accepting a Rajya Sabha seat?
Nobody has offered it to me. Are you offering one?
But sir, when you say that, I'm just quoting
Yes, yes.
Whatever you said just now,
Yeah.
that there is no case to revisit the cabinet decision on gas price hike. Now, the RBI has followed a due process on bank license grant, and they have asked the election commission if they can go ahead with the process. Do you believe that there is a case for grant of election bank licenses, even though the issue has been sent to the election commission? Do you believe the election commission should allow the RBI to go ahead with the bank license?
See, Governor Raghuram Rajan made it clear, even on that day, that he referred the matter to the Election Commission only out of abundant caution, and that this process had started almost 2.5 years ago. This is a process in which government has no role at all. Let me repeat that once again for the record. The process of inviting, screening, scrutinizing, and selecting candidates for grant of bank license is a purely RBI-driven process, and the government has no role at all. Therefore, when government has no role to interrupt that process for whatever reason, namely an election, is an indirect admission to the world that somehow government has a role in the grant of bank licenses. That will send a completely wrong signal. Therefore, I think there was no need to refer it. He explained it by saying he had done it out of abundant caution. He had just assumed office a few months ago. He was playing it safe. But I think the process of granting bank licenses should continue. uninterrupted.
Manoj, Economic Times.
Mr. Chidambaram, you said you would like to hand over the economy to a hand that holds firmly and privately. As a finance minister who checks the performance of Mr. Narendra Modi as an administrator and the way he managed the economy of this country, and since he is a contingent of life, he has in it to drive the economy as quickly as you want your successor or successive government to do.
Is he going to be the finance minister too? I said, I will keep a firm hand on the wheel and I would like to hand over, I would like to be able to give it over to another firm hand on the wheel. I was talking of the next finance minister and I'm hopeful, well, let's say even reasonably confident that it will not be a man of the choice of Mr. Narendra Modi.
PTI.
Modi said that he will go after the dictate like Ashok Chavan whenever he comes to power. In 1 year, he will decide. So does it show that you have been soft on the dictate? Because when they give Lok Sabha MP, Rajya Sabha MP.
Then I was surprised by the statement that I will go after Chavan. Is he going to appoint himself as director of CBI also? It shows a complete lack of understanding of how institutions should function. Whether anyone should be named in a charge sheet, whether anyone should be prosecuted, is a matter entirely between the investigating agency and the court. The executive has no role to play in it. And Mr. Modi has said that he will go after Mr. Chavan in whatever case. I think that is an astonishing statement which has to be condemned. But if he does appoint himself as director of CBI also and goes after Mr. Chavan, I sincerely hope he'll go after several others in his own party. I don't want to name anyone. There are some of them are south of the Vindhyas, some of them are to the east of the Ganga. There are several people there.
Nandita, Times Now.
Sir, today while campaigning in the Northeast, Narendra Modi has suggested that the government has got reasonably Italian colleagues due to Mrs. Gandhi's origin. How do you respond to that?
I didn't understand the question. Please
Can you
repeat
repeat it?
Many didn't hear it either.
Today while Narendra Modi was campaigning, he suggested that the government has got easy on the Italian colleagues because of Sonia Gandhi's origin in Italy. So he suggested that she's had something to do with it.
See, these are traits in his character which we have pointed out for the last over 2 years. These are deep flaws in his character. He cannot resist such derogatory remarks, such perverse characterizations. He cannot resist that. He has said this about an chief election commissioner. Just to draw attention to his religion, he called them in meeting after meeting James Michael Lindo. You know that? When he referred to people practicing the Islamic faith, he said, Hum Panch, Hamara Pachas. Pachis. Then, when he referred to the address of the Congress president, he said something like Gus Numbri or something. These are deep flaws in the character of a person. Such a person aspires to be Prime Minister. I'm ashamed of the party which does not point out these flaws. The Italian marine case is before the Supreme Court. Whether the marine should be prosecuted under this law or that law is a matter of law for the lawyers to argue and for the court to decide. What has this got to do with the country of birth of the Congress president? I want everyone hearing me and listening to me to note that these are deep character flaws in Mr. Narendra Modi.
News Express.
Myself Mohit Dubey from News Nation.
News Nation, okay.
My question is that you are a big leader of Congress party. Are you ready to contest against Narendra Modi from Varanasi?
See, I wish I could contest, but I do not speak Hindi. I cannot campaign in Hindi. And I'm sure Mr. Narendra Modi would not like to contest in Shivaganga either.
Yeah, there's a gentleman. Yeah.
So while these numbers make for an interesting debate, there are some indicators you have left out, like tax revenue, non-tax revenue, and non-tax spending. Especially non-plan expenditure don't show the subsidy, the increased subsidy burden of the government year after year. The reason why you've left those indicators out, at least from this reason.
I have not left out any indicators deliberately. I have only put some indicators on a page. All this is available. It's in the public domain. Nothing can be suppressed. You wanted to know about non-plan expenditure. I'll tell you what about non-plan expenditure. In 2012-13, non-plan expenditure was 9,96,742 crore. In 2013-14, it increased to 11,14,902 crore. That's a substantial increase of about, if I do just a quick calculation, about 11 lakh, 9 lakh, 11 lakh, 96, 4, about 1 lakh 20,000 crore. So it's not as though non-plan expenditure is not increased. Many of that is, of course, subsidies. The bulk of it is subsidies. Nothing has been suppressed. I just put some data on a sheet of paper. You're welcome to come and ask for other data. I'm willing to put that on a piece of paper and give it to you for all the 7 years.
Yeah, so this gentleman.
वाराणसी के बारे में अभी आपने जो भी अपनी राय कही, लेकिन मेरा सवाल ये है कि अभी तक कांग्रेस पार्टी की तरफ से वाराणसी से कोई कैंडिडेट का अनाउंस नहीं हुआ है।
When is the election in Varanasi? Go ahead, go ahead.
नरेंद्र मोदी
I think we have time.
वडोदरा से मधुसूदन मिस्त्री जनपार्टी के जनरल सेक्रेटरी के खिलाफ चुनाव लड़ रहे हैं, लेकिन अभी तक वाराणसी से किसी कैंडिडेट का नाम अनाउंस नहीं हुआ है। पार्टी चाहेगी कि किसी बड़े कद का नेता नरेंद्र मोदी के खिलाफ चुनाव लड़े।
Well, I think you're right. I think the party is looking for a strong candidate against Mr. Narendra Modi. And if it takes a day or two, so be it. They will announce a candidate.
आज सुप्रीम कोर्ट का फैसला आया है और बुलेट की फांसी की सजा जो है वो उम्र कैद में तब्दील कर दी गई है।
We do not react to court.
What did he say?
About that court judgment on that.
What have they said?
They have life sentence. Life.
Yeah, but I don't know the court case. But speaking for myself, going by the trend of judgments delivered over the last 3 or 4 months, I expected that the court will commute the death sentence in that case also to life sentence. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not surprised by the judgment. That is a trend of the Supreme Court judgments over the last 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
Congress people are facing a serious economic issue, rather it's a debate on economic issue that you particularly have not extended help to the extent of the demand of a debt moratorium on the debt. So at the hindsight, do you think that if you could extend the help, you perhaps would not have lost it, quote unquote, valuable allies, as you have used to say?
See, I have explained this to the Chief Minister of West Bengal. I've explained this to her ministers, to her finance minister. When Mr. Mukherjee was finance minister, he did extend a special package to Bengal, brought it under BRGF. That package continued even after I became finance minister. So whatever was promised under BRGF to Bengal as a special package has been extended. That money has been given. Now what Bengal wants is a moratorium on debt. Now what does that mean? It means that the interest burden on Bengal's outstanding debt must be borne by the central government. Now, firstly, there is no provision in the budget to bear that burden. Secondly, there is no scheme under which that burden can be borne. And thirdly, if I bear the interest burden of one state's debt, what about other states? They will say, bear our interest burden also. Punjab will ask the same thing, Kerala will ask the same thing. All the three debt-stressed states will ask for the same dispensation. And all other states will say, just because we managed our debt better, we have to bear the interest burden. States which do not manage their debt better, even though it was done under the communist rule, you take over the interest burden. I mean, there are issues which I thought everybody understands. I'm sure you understand what I've said, but yet these questions are asked from time to time.
So Sanjay Telegraph here, sir. So here.
Congress party has clearly said that there is a agenda of the corporate. What is the problem of the corporate green deal?
There is no problem. We have delivered the highest growth in any period of 5 years. Even after the financial crisis hit the world, our average growth in the first 4 years is 7.2%. Counting this year, it will come down to about 6.9 or 7%. We have no problem with the corporate world. In fact, I don't think the corporate world has any problems with us. All I'm pointing out is there are sections of big business which are very, very, quote-unquote, chummy with Mr. Narendra Modi. And you asked me why, and I gave you my view. Because I think his brand of liberalism is crony capitalism.
Smita, Hindu.
Follow-up question.
Just a moment. Everybody needs an opportunity here. Smita.
The Congress manifesto speaks about hands that build the nation.
What is it?
Build the nation. Manifesto
Yeah.
speaks about the hands that build the nation.
Hands that build the nation.
About the 70 crore people above India and below middle class. And the political part of it is that trying to create a constituency that goes beyond caste and religion. Do you think this is possible in India right now? Do you think it is possible to create a constituency that goes beyond caste and religion, which can be defined by economic status and aspirations?
I think so. I think there is an aspirational India. There's an India that has broken out of absolute poverty, but still is denied access to a number of goods and services. This is an aspirational India. You find them in cities, you find them in district capital towns, you find them in industrial hubs, and many of them don't care about caste. Many of them don't care about religion, although they may practice a religion. And this constituency is a substantial constituency. And I think if the Congress manifesto has appealed to this constituency, that is a very wise appeal. I think we should now learn to deal with a changed India, an India where there are people still in poverty, a section of the people who have broken out of absolute poverty, aspirational, who can aspire to become middle class and more, and then a section of the people who, because of their education and opportunities, are what we would call well-to-do. I think we need to deal with each of these segments separately, and I think it is wise on the part of the Congress manifesto to look at each of these segments closely.
NewsX.
Well, I think Uma Bharati has spoken her mind. She's been truthful. I think many other BJP leaders are not so candid or truthful as Uma Bharati is. Deep down, I think all of them believe that a temple must be built on the very spot where the masjid was demolished. I think all of them believe that there must be a uniform civil code imposed on the people of India. I think all of them believe that Article 370 granting special status to Jammu and Kashmir must be rescinded. Uma Bharati is candid to speak her mind. Many others will hide their true feelings and put on a pretense.
Sahara. No, just. Yeah, no, after this, we are coming this side.
I don't know about legal luminary. I was whatever you describe. I'm not. Now, all right. That's a serious question. The SIT is an investigating team. It had a limited mandate. It did not have all the police powers. It was denied certain powers which are available to the normal police. SIT gave a report. The court accepted that report. That is, the first court accepted the report. That report has been challenged in a higher court. So the final word has not been said. I'm not here to pronounce anyone innocent or guilty. All that I'm saying is, it's wrong to describe the SIT's report to the first court, accepted by the first court, as a quote-unquote clean chit. It is a report. It is in favor of certain persons. It is against certain persons, but the report has been challenged in a higher court.
Nora Chopra.
No, I'm not giving every year. It's all available in the economic survey. I'm only pulling out years which are turning points. The year in which Mr. Yashwant Sinha assumed office, the year in which NDA government was formed and started its 5-year tenure, the year in which Mr. Yashwant Sinha, again to put it mildly, was moved out of North Block and a successor was installed, then the year in which we took over, the year in which we completed UPA 1 and the year in which we complete UPA 2. If you want any particular year, I'll be quite happy to answer.
Nora, only one question.
What is the question?
Just now said that you would like to take some time off for other things. What are these other things?
And so just to follow up to that, same thing. You said that you would like to decide how to play the last 10 overs yourself. Is this because this is a tough battle, or right now there is a perception that the Congress might not do well in the election?
I don't know what you felt in 2004 and in 2009, but going by your demeanor and body language, I assume you said more or less the same thing in 2004 and 2009. I lost an election in 1999 when I was in Manila Congress. But that didn't prevent me from contesting the next election in 2004, nor the next election in 2009. I know what I want to do with my life, just as you know what you want to do with your life. The Congress will be an important part of my life. And I will continue to work for the party. I will continue to work for a government if the Congress forms the government. I'm not contesting an election. I want time to do other things. And I don't think this is a forum in which I should share what I want to do, but I can give you a hint. I've said I want to travel, I want to read, I want to write, I want to reconnect with my friends in Tamil literature.
Planning to write an autobiography? Planning to write an autobiography?
Well, I am not old enough to write an autobiography.
Sir. Renu Mittal. Renu, you wanted to...
I can't hear if everybody speaks. I'm here, I'll answer your question. Yes.
I think Renu Mittal can answer that, take that question.
Please, kindly observe silence. Yes. I don't know. How do you reach that astounding conclusion?
Because we would have assumed that somebody from your party would in any case have been steady hand.
No, I said I want to hand it over. I said so. You didn't hear me. I said I will hand over to another firm hand. That's what I said.
Yeah, please. So what?
Yes, Akansha. That's not correct. I have done more than anyone else to press the other governments to share information. Mr. Mukherjee did his best. I have pressed so hard that the Swiss finance minister is deeply embarrassed even to meet me in international fora, because I've told her that this is a very serious issue in India and she must share information with us. They take refuge under one excuse or another. One of the excuses is this is stolen data. I said, what is stolen? I didn't steal any data. This was data given to us by the French government. Then she shared, well, we can't share information on stolen data unless our parliament passes a law. Then I asked her, how did you share information with the United States? The United States has got greater clout than India. You shared information with the US, you won't share it with us. Then I said, I'm going to write you a letter. I raised it in the G20. I was hoping she will come to G20 in Australia. She didn't come to the G20 in Australia. I was determined to raise it in the G20. And I intend to raise it in the G20, which meets in Washington on the sidelines of the Fund Bank meeting on April 10 and 11. And then later, at every forum, we will raise this issue that Switzerland is non-compliant with the G20 resolution that the era of bank secrecy is over. I have done everything possible within my power to get the information. In the budget speech, I've reported what information I got, the number of cases I've got. In course of time, in the next couple of weeks, perhaps, we will even release some information about who has been assessed, who has been taxed.
Yeah, please.
Yes. Manufacturing slowdown can be partially explained by the slowdown in global trade. Manufacturing is critically dependent upon exports. although we have a large domestic market. So that's why I say it can be partially explained by the slowdown in global trade. The other part is that we were hemmed in by a number of regulations and regulators. Some of these were self-imposed chains around ourselves. I wish the Ministry of Environment and Forest had moved with greater alacrity. I wish that civil servants did not stop doing their work in fear of the CNAG. But I can only wish these things. I can't will that this will happen. But things have changed. After we constituted the Cabinet Committee on Investment and the Project Monitoring Group, things have changed. We have cleared a large number of projects. And today I read, to my pleasant surprise, a report that 14 states have asked the Government of India to help them set up a similar PMG in the state, which means the idea that are mooted has worked. CCI has worked. PMG has worked.
Sir, Prime Minister said if Modi becomes,
Yeah.
if Narendra Modi becomes a Prime Minister, said if Narendra Modi becomes a Prime Minister, it would be disastrous. What do you have to say on this?
I concur with that.
NDTV.
Question, but addition to this, that what kind
No.
of Prime Minister
Okay.
Rahul Gandhi would put?
He will be an earnest, hard-working, concerned, compassionate Prime Minister who runs a democratic cabinet. He has his own ideas, and I'm sure he will take ideas from his colleagues, both within the party and within the government.
That's the last question.
That is not the question. Don't distort questions. That is not the question.
Okay.
You may not like him, but don't distort his question.
Yeah.